Do you think that she had more books? Amy cupped her hand over her mouth. Secret library? Alistair shrugged. It's a large house. We could split up and search. But then Dan noticed something. One of the little random details that often caught his eye. On the wall at the very top of the bookshelf was a plaster crest, just like the one the front door of the mansion. A fancy C surrounded by 4 smaller coat of arms. A dragon, a bear, a wolf, and a pair of snakes wrapped around a sword. He must have seen this a million times before, but he never noticed the smaller crests each had a letter carved in the middle, E, T, J, and L. Give me a ladder, he said. What? Alistair said. Never mind, Dan decided. He began to climb the shelf, knocking down more books and knickknacks. Dan, get down, Amy protested. You're going to fall and break your arm again. Dan reached the crest, the one that you saw yesterday that you're supposed to doodle. Lance, turn it off, dude. It's obnoxious. You don't need it. Okay, I understand. I appreciate you watched it, but then you just kind of stood there with the water running. Realized the rest of the class is trying to concentrate. And you're on YouTube for that. All right. So it's the same one that they saw yesterday. They had those little marks. Amy, he called. What were those 4 branches again? Ekaterina, she called Thomas, Janus, and Lucian. Ekaterina, Dan repeated as he pressed the E. Thomas, Lucian, and Janus. As he pressed the last letter, the whole shelf swung outward. Dan had to jump out of the way to avoid being squished into a book sandwich. Where the bookshelf had been was a dark stairwell leading down. So he just pushed the buttons and found a secret library. A secret passage, Uncle Alistair said. Dan, I'm impressed. It might be dangerous, Amy said. You're right, Dan agreed. Ladies first. Chapter 5. Amy could have lived in the secret library. Instead, she almost died there. She led the way down the steps and gasped when she saw the books. They went on forever. She used to think the main public library in Copley Square was the best in the world, but this was even better. It was more library-ish. The shelves were dark wood, and the books were leather-bound and very old, with gilded titles on the spines. They looked like they'd been used well over the centuries. Oriental carpet covered the floor. Cushy chairs were placed around the room, so you could plop down anywhere and start reading. Maps and oversized folios are spread out on big tables. Against one wall was a line of oak file cabinets and a huge computer with 3 separate monitors, like something they'd use at NASA. Glass chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling and provided plenty of light, even though the room was obviously underground. They descended a long way to get there, and there were no windows. This place is amazing, Amy ran into the room. Books, Dan said. Yay. He checked out the computer, but it was frozen on the password screen. He jiggled a few cabinet drawers, but they were all locked. Uncle Alistair gingerly picked a red folder from the shelves. Latin. Caesar's campaign in Gaul. Copied on vellum. It looks like it was handwritten by a scribe. 1500? It must be worth a fortune, Amy said. Dan suddenly looked more interested. We could sell them? Like on eBay? Oh, quiet, Dan. These are priceless. She ran her fingers down the spine. Machiavelli, Melville, Milton. They're alphabetical order by author. Find the S section. They did, but it was a big disappointment. There were 10 shelves packed with everything from Shakespeare's first folio to Bruce Springsteen's complete lyrics, but nothing with Richard for the first name. Something about that, Amy muttered. The name Richard S. coupled with resolution kept nagging at her. They went together, but she didn't know how. It drove her crazy when she couldn't remember things. She's read so many books that sometimes they got jumbled around in her head. Then she glanced down the aisle. At the end of the shelf, curled up on a box. Is there a reason why you have to shut that? Okay, because Julie will be coming. I don't want her to think she can't come in. Then she glanced down the aisle. At the end of the shelf, curled up on a box on a small table, was an old friend. Saladin, she cried. Thanks. That way we can... The cat opened his green eyes and said, Mrr. Without much surprise, like he was asking, oh, it's you. Did you bring me my red snapper? Amy and Dan ran to him. Saladin had the most beautiful fur Amy had ever seen. Silver with spots like a miniature snow leopard. Well, not so miniature. Actually, since he was pretty enormous with huge paws and a long striped tail. So this is like a really big cat, really big silver cat. Saladin, what are you doing down here? Amy stroked his back. The cat closed his eyes and purred. Amy knew he was just a cat, but she was so happy to see him she could have cried. It was like part of Grace was still alive. Hey, Saladin, Dan said. What's that you're sitting on, dude? Brrp. Saladin complained as Dan lifted him up. Underneath was a polished mahogany box with the gold initials GC engraved on the lid. Amy's heart skipped a beat. It's Grace's jewelry box. Amy opened it up, and there was Grace's personal jewelry, which Amy had loved since she was little. Grace used to let her play with these, a pearl bracelet, a diamond ring, a pair of emerald earrings. Amy hadn't realized much later that the stuff was worth thousands of dollars. She blinked the tears out of her eyes. Now that she found Saladin and the jewelry box, she felt like she was standing in Grace's most secret place. She missed her grandmother so much it hurt. Then she pulled a very familiar piece out of the jewelry box. Dear me, Alistair said, that's her favorite necklace, isn't it? He was right. Amy had never seen her grandmother without this necklace. 12 intricately carved squares of jade with the green dragon medallion in the center. Grace had called it her good luck charm. Amy touched the dragon in the center. She wondered why Grace hadn't been buried with this necklace. It didn't seem right. Hey, Dan called, look at this. Amy found him in the corner holding Saladin and staring at a giant wall map covered in push pins. The pins were in 5 different colors: red, blue, yellow, green, and white. Every major city in the world seemed to have at least one. Some of the areas were stuck with only red pins, some with green or blue, some were several colors. She's been doing voodoo on the world, Dan said. No, dummy, Amy said. These must be markers. They tell where something is. Like what? Amy shook her head. She found the map creepy. Maybe something about the Cahills? She glanced over at Alistair. He frowned. I don't know, my dear. Very curious. But he wouldn't meet her eyes. And Amy got the feeling he was hiding something. Look at Europe, Dan said, and the East Coast. Those areas were heavily pinned in all 5 colors. Amy could hardly see the cities underneath. If these pins represented the Cahills, then it looked like they started somewhere in Europe and then spread across the world, heavily colonizing North America. Then she thought, Europe, colonies, North America. The name Richard S. kept nagging in her mind again, trying to scratch its way out. The name from the 18th century, someone who had written resolutions. Suddenly, she turned and raced down a row of shelves. Hey, Dan cried, Saladin wiggling off his arms. Amy, where are you going? The F's, she called. What for, failure? She got to the F's and found it immediately. A tiny book, so tattered it was falling apart. The cover is decorated with red and white wood print of colonial farmers. The title is faded, but she could still make it out. Poor Richard's Almanac. By the way, that's a real book. Poor Richard's Almanac for the year 1739 by Richard Saunders. But it's in the F's. Of course. Uncle asked, no, there's no reason you need to sharpen your pencil when I'm doing read aloud, dude. Don't. You don't just get to wander around and play, dude. Of course, Alistair said. Very good, my dear. Very good indeed. Despite herself, Amy felt flushed with pride. Wait a second, Dan said. This was written by Richard Saunders? What's it doing under F? Richard Saunders was a pseudonym, Uncle Alistair explained. Dan knit his eyebrows. A fake foot? Amy tried to strangle him, but Alistair said patiently, no, my dear boy, you're thinking of a pseudopod. A pseudonym is a fake name, a nom de plume, a disguise for the author. This book was written by a very famous person. Benjamin Franklin, Amy said. I did a report on him last year. So Richard Saunders is Benjamin Franklin. And he really did do that. Benjamin Franklin wrote a book called The Poor Richard Almanac. And it says it's by Richard Saunders.
Where is it?
But it's actually by Benjamin Franklin. Yo.
So you probably don't know someone called Richard Saunders, but they probably do know someone called Benjamin Emerson.
Yeah, and it's so that like he wouldn't have people hounding about it. Gavin?
Do you have the book or is
I do not. But it's basically like a farmer's almanac. And they still make these. She opened the book. The text was printed in block letters without much punctuation, so it's hard to read. But there were charts, illustrations, columns of numbers. This is the most famous thing Franklin ever published. Poor Richard was a character Franklin created. He had lots of pseudonyms like that. When he wrote, he would pretend he was different people. So we're related to a guy with multiple personalities, Dan said. That's great. Aren't almanacs for sports? Not this kind, Amy said. This has facts for farmers. It's like a yearbook with useful tips and articles. Franklin put all his famous quotations in there, like early to bed and early to rise. And that's where we stop. Oh, yeah. So, with this book, some of the things in it are real.